Nothing changes until you do. That sentence sounds simple, almost obvious, and yet most people spend years avoiding it. They feel stuck, frustrated, restless, disappointed with how life looks and how it feels. They want more clarity, more peace, more direction. But quietly, beneath all of that wanting, they are waiting, waiting for circumstances to improve, waiting for motivation to appear, waiting for the right moment to arrive. This is the uncomfortable truth most people never sit with long enough. Life does not respond to waiting. It responds to movement. Not frantic movement, not dramatic change, but internal shifts that slowly reshape the way you think, choose, and act. When nothing changes, it's easy to believe you are unlucky, that you missed an opportunity, that life has been unfair, heavy, or uncooperative. Those explanations feel comforting because they place the responsibility somewhere else. But comfort has a cost, and the cost is power. The moment you accept that nothing changes until you do, something subtle happens. The story shifts. You are no longer a passive observer of your life. You are no longer waiting to be saved by a better situation or a future version of yourself. You begin to see that the patterns around you exist because something inside you has remained the same. This isn't about blame, it's about clarity. If your days feel repetitive, it's not because time is moving too slowly, it's because your choices are familiar. If your life feels heavy, it's not because you're incapable. It's because you're carrying habits, beliefs, and reactions that no longer serve you. And if nothing seems to move forward, it's because the internal direction hasn't changed. That realization can feel uncomfortable at first, even threatening, because it removes excuses. But it also removes helplessness. Responsibility, when understood correctly, is not a burden. It is the doorway to freedom. You don't need to overhaul your entire life to begin. You don't need to become someone else overnight. Change does not start with grand declarations. It starts with awareness, with honesty, with the quiet willingness to look inward and ask a difficult question. What am I doing or not doing that keeps everything the same? This is where real transformation begins, not with force, not with urgency, but with truth. Stay here for a moment. Let that idea settle. Nothing changes until you do. And the moment you stop resisting that truth, you stop feeling trapped by it. Waiting feels safe because it asks nothing of you. When you wait, you don't have to risk failure. You don't have to confront uncertainty. You don't have to discover whether you are capable or not. Waiting allows you to stay exactly where you are while convincing yourself that progress is still possible someday. It creates the illusion of movement without demanding action. For many people, waiting becomes a quiet habit. You tell yourself you'll start when you feel ready, when you feel more confident, when things calm down, when life gives you a sign. And because those conditions are always just out of reach, waiting stretches on, unnoticed, year after year. Change, on the other hand, feels threatening. Not because it is dangerous, but because it is unfamiliar. Even when your current situation causes discomfort, it is a familiar discomfort. You know how to survive it. You've adapted to it. Changing means stepping into territory where the outcome isn't guaranteed, and the mind is wired to avoid uncertainty, even if certainty is painful. There is also an identity risk. If you've spent a long time seeing yourself as tired, stuck, overwhelmed, or unlucky, those labels quietly become part of who you are. Letting go of them means letting go of a version of yourself you've learned to explain your life through. Change threatens that story, and without that story, the mind asks, "Who am I now?" So you wait, not because you're lazy, not because you don't care, but because waiting protects you from discomfort, judgment, and disappointment, at least temporarily. But safety has a hidden cost. The longer you wait, the more distance you create between who you are and who you know you could be. That distance slowly turns into frustration, then resentment, then numbness. You start to feel tired all the time, even when you rest. Unmotivated, even when you want to care. That's not exhaustion. That's the weight of unrealized potential pressing quietly on your mind. Waiting also trains the brain to associate inaction with relief. Every time you avoid a difficult step, you feel a brief sense of comfort. Over time, your mind learns that avoidance equals safety, and that makes future change feel even harder. This is why waiting can feel peaceful on the surface while creating tension underneath. You may appear calm, but internally something is unsettled. Something knows that time is passing and nothing is moving with it. Understanding this isn't meant to shame you, it's meant to free you. When you see waiting for what it is, a coping mechanism, not a solution, you stop judging yourself and start questioning the habit instead. And that question is powerful, because once you recognize why waiting feels safer, you can finally decide whether that safety is worth the cost. One of the most comforting beliefs the mind creates is the idea that something outside of you will eventually fix everything. Maybe it's a new opportunity, a better routine, a relationship that finally understands you, more money, more time, more motivation. The details change, but the hope stays the same. When this arrives, things will finally fall into place. This belief is subtle, and that's what makes it dangerous. It doesn't feel like avoidance, it feels like optimism. But underneath it is a quiet surrender of responsibility. You begin to live as if your life is on hold, waiting for the right external condition to unlock your potential. Stoic philosophy warned against this centuries ago, not because externals are bad, but because they are unstable. Anything you don't control can never be the foundation of lasting change. When your sense of progress depends on something outside of you, you are always vulnerable to disappointment. The illusion of external rescue teaches you to look outward whenever something feels wrong inward. If you feel restless, you blame your environment. If you feel unfulfilled, you assume something is missing. If you feel stuck, you wait for a breakthrough moment. Over time, this trains the mind to seek solutions everywhere except where real change begins. And the hardest part is this: sometimes external changes do help. A new job, a move, a fresh start can bring relief. But relief is not transformation. Without internal change, the same patterns quietly follow you into new circumstances. The same reactions, the same habits, the same frustrations, just wearing different clothes. This is why people can achieve what they once wanted and still feel unsatisfied. The environment changed, but the inner world remained untouched. External rescue also weakens self-trust. Each time you wait for something outside of you to save you, you reinforce the belief that you cannot save yourself. That belief slowly erodes confidence, even if you're not aware of it. You begin to feel smaller than life instead of capable within it. The truth is less dramatic, but far more empowering. No moment is coming to transform you. No perfect condition is required. No one is arriving to hand you clarity, discipline, or peace. Those things are built internally through repeated choices, not delivered externally through luck or timing. This doesn't mean you stop appreciating opportunities or support. It means you stop depending on them for change. You stop postponing your growth until life becomes easier. You begin where you are, with what you have, as you are. When you let go of the illusion of external rescue, something grounding happens. The pressure lifts, the waiting ends. You stop scanning the horizon for salvation and start paying attention to your own responses, decisions, and behaviors. And in that shift, you quietly reclaim the one thing that was never missing in the first place: control over yourself. When the illusion of external rescue fades, there is a brief moment of discomfort. If no one is coming to save you, and no perfect moment is arriving, then the responsibility rests somewhere closer than expected. It rests with you. And for many people, that realization feels heavy at first. Responsibility has been misunderstood for a long time. It's often associated with blame, pressure, or shame. A harsh voice that says, "This is your fault." But that interpretation keeps people stuck. True responsibility is not about punishment. It's about power. The moment you accept responsibility, you reclaim agency. You stop waiting for permission to change. You stop outsourcing your future to circumstances you can't control. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What can I do differently now?" That question alone shifts the entire direction of your life. This is where many people hesitate, because responsibility removes excuses. And excuses, while limiting, are comforting. They soften disappointment and protect the ego. But they also quietly reinforce helplessness. When you let go of them, you feel exposed, honest, awake. Yet something important happens in that honesty. You realize that if your actions and reactions helped create your current reality, then different actions and reactions can create a different one. Responsibility doesn't trap you. It unlocks options. This is why responsibility is inseparable from freedom. You cannot have one without the other. The more responsibility you avoid, the more controlled you feel by life. The more responsibility you accept, the more control you regain over how you experience it. Responsibility also changes how you view struggle. Instead of seeing obstacles as proof that something is wrong, you begin to see them as feedback, information, signals pointing toward where growth is required. This reframing removes emotional drama and replaces it with calm curiosity. You stop asking, "Why is this so hard?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" That shift alone reduces suffering, because suffering isn't just pain, it's pain without meaning. Taking responsibility doesn't mean you caused everything that happened to you. It means you choose how you respond now. You choose whether you repeat patterns or break them, whether you stay reactive or become intentional. This is the turning point, the moment where life stops feeling like something that happens to you and starts feeling like something you participate in, not perfectly, not effortlessly, but consciously. And once you experience responsibility this way, not as weight, but as strength, you begin to understand something crucial. The power you were waiting for was never missing. It was just waiting to be claimed. Once responsibility is reclaimed, it becomes impossible to unsee something important. Staying the same is not neutral. It feels passive, quiet, harmless. But in reality, it carries a cost, one that accumulates slowly, almost invisibly. Most people assume change is risky, while staying the same is safe. The truth is the opposite. Change brings short-term discomfort. Staying the same brings long-term regret. The cost of inaction doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives in subtle ways, in the quiet frustration you feel at the end of the day, in the sense that time is moving, but you aren't moving with it, in the growing gap between the life you're living and the life you once imagined. Over time, this gap turns into self-doubt. You begin to question your own capability, not because you failed, but because you never fully tried, and that untested potential becomes heavy. Heavier than effort, heavier than discipline, heavier than fear. There is also an emotional cost. When you repeatedly ignore the internal signal that something needs to change, you train yourself not to listen. That disconnection dulls clarity. You become less sensitive to what matters and more reactive to what doesn't. Small problems feel overwhelming. Minor setbacks feel personal. Emotional resilience erodes quietly. Staying the same also reshapes identity. Each day of inaction reinforces a narrative. This is just how I am. And the longer that story is repeated, the harder it feels to challenge it. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. Familiarity creates comfort even when it creates suffering. Then there is the cost. Most people never calculate the future cost. Every habit you don't change today becomes harder to change tomorrow. Every boundary you avoid setting teaches others how to treat you. Every moment you choose comfort over growth, you strengthen the version of yourself you're trying to outgrow. This is not meant to create fear. It's meant to create clarity. Because once you see the cost of staying the same, change stops feeling like a threat. It starts to feel like relief, like alignment, like movement towards something that has been waiting for you. Pain does not come from growth. Pain comes from resisting growth, from knowing something needs to change and choosing not to act. That internal conflict is exhausting. It drains energy far more than effort ever will. And here is the quiet truth most people miss. You are already paying a price. The question is not whether change will cost you something. The question is which cost you are willing to live with. the temporary discomfort of becoming who you need to be, or the permanent weight of remaining who you are not. Once you see that contrast clearly, hesitation begins to lose its grip, because the real risk was never change. The real risk was staying exactly where you are.
After recognizing the cost of staying the same, many people expect change to begin with a surge of motivation, a sudden burst of clarity, a powerful emotional shift that makes everything feel easy. But that moment rarely comes, and waiting for it is just another form of delay. Real change begins far more quietly. It begins the moment you stop negotiating with yourself, the moment you stop asking how you will feel later and start acting based on what you know now. Change does not require confidence. It does not require certainty. It requires a decision that is no longer open for debate. This is where most people misunderstand motivation. They believe motivation leads to action, when, in reality, action creates motivation. Movement precedes belief. Discipline comes before confidence, not after. The mind resists this idea because it wants emotional permission before effort. But growth doesn't work that way. The moment change begins is often anticlimactic. It looks like a small, ordinary choice made without enthusiasm, choosing to act even when you don't feel ready, choosing consistency over intensity, choosing progress over comfort. This is powerful because it removes pressure. You no longer need to feel inspired to move forward. You only need to be willing to act despite resistance. And resistance, contrary to what most people believe, is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something new. Change also begins when you shift your relationship with time. Instead of thinking in terms of outcomes, you focus on direction. Instead of asking how long it will take, you ask whether the next step aligns with who you're becoming. This keeps you grounded in the present, where real control exists. There is also an internal shift that marks the true beginning of change. You stop seeing discomfort as an obstacle and start seeing it as part of the process. You stop interpreting difficulty as failure and start recognizing it as evidence of growth. This reframing stabilizes your emotions and keeps you moving forward when progress feels slow. Importantly, this moment is not dramatic. No one else may notice it. There may be no immediate reward, but internally something has changed. You are no longer waiting. You are participating. And participation changes everything. When you act, even in small ways, you begin rebuilding trust with yourself. Each follow-through, no matter how minor, sends a signal: I can rely on myself. That trust compounds. It strengthens identity. It creates momentum. This is why the beginning of change is often invisible to others, but deeply significant to you. It is the moment you stop living reactively and start living deliberately, not because you feel ready, but because you decided that staying the same is no longer an option. That decision, quiet, firm, and internal, is where everything truly begins. Once change has begun, the next challenge is sustaining it. This is where many people lose momentum, not because they lack discipline, but because they expect too much too soon. They confuse transformation with intensity, and when intensity fades, they assume something has gone wrong. Real momentum is built, differently. It comes from small, repeatable actions that rebuild trust with yourself. Actions so manageable that resistance has no strong argument against them. When change feels heavy, the mind rebels. When it feels doable, the mind cooperates. The most effective shifts are often unglamorous, waking up at a consistent time, limiting distractions for a short, focused period, completing one task fully instead of starting 5, pausing before reacting. These actions may seem insignificant, but their power lies in repetition. Each small action is a vote for the person you are becoming. One vote doesn't decide the outcome, but many votes cast consistently shape identity. This is how momentum becomes self-sustaining. You stop relying on willpower and start relying on systems. Another critical shift is narrowing your focus. When attention is scattered, effort dissolves. Progress accelerates when you decide what matters most and allow other things to remain unfinished. Clarity is not doing more, it is choosing less with intention. This also applies internally. Instead of trying to fix everything about yourself, you choose one pattern to work on, one habit to strengthen, one behavior to reduce. This prevents overwhelm and replaces it with direction. Momentum also grows when you measure progress correctly. Most people look for visible results and feel discouraged when they don't appear quickly. But the earliest signs of change are internal. Increased self-respect, improved emotional regulation, greater follow-through. These are quiet indicators, but they matter more than external validation. It's important to expect resistance even as momentum builds. There will be days when old habits resurface, moments when doubt returns. This does not mean you are failing. It means your nervous system is adjusting to a new baseline. Consistency, not perfection, carries you through this phase. Another powerful shift is learning to end each day with a sense of completion, not by doing everything, but by doing what you said you would do. This reinforces self-trust and prevents the mental fatigue that comes from unfinished intentions. Over time, these small shifts compound. What once required effort becomes automatic. What once felt uncomfortable becomes familiar. And familiarity, when aligned with growth, becomes strength. Momentum is not dramatic. It is quiet, stable, grounded. It doesn't rush. It doesn't force. It moves steadily forward, even on days when motivation is absent. This is how change becomes sustainable, not through constant pressure, but through alignment between your actions and your values. When those two move together, progress stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling like a natural extension of who you are becoming. And once momentum is established, the fear of change begins to fade. Because you are no longer imagining transformation, you are living it, one deliberate step at a time. As momentum builds, something unexpected happens. The discomfort you once tried to escape becomes more noticeable, not because things are getting worse, but because you are no longer numbing yourself with avoidance. Growth brings awareness, and awareness brings sensation. This is where many people misinterpret discomfort as a sign to stop. They assume something has gone wrong. But discomfort is not a warning. It is a signal that old patterns are loosening their grip. Discomfort appears whenever you step beyond what is familiar. The nervous system resists change because it prefers predictability even when predictability is limiting. This resistance can feel like anxiety, restlessness, self-doubt, or the urge to return to old habits. The mistake is believing these sensations mean danger. Learning to sit with discomfort is not about forcing yourself to suffer. It is about changing your relationship with uncomfortable feelings. Instead of reacting immediately, you pause, you observe, you allow the sensation to exist without needing to escape it. This pause is powerful. It creates space between stimulus and response. In that space, you regain choice. Stoic philosophy emphasized this principle deeply. You cannot always control what arises within you, but you can control how you relate to it. Discomfort loses its power when it is no longer treated as an enemy. When you stop fighting it, it stops controlling you. Sitting with discomfort also teaches emotional resilience. You begin to realize that feelings rise and fall on their own. They are temporary states, not permanent truths. This realization reduces. You stop interpreting discomfort as failure and start seeing it as a passing phase of adaptation. Another important shift occurs here. You learn that comfort is not the goal. Calm is. Comfort avoids discomfort. Calm allows it. Calm is steady, grounded, and present, even when things feel challenging. This distinction matters because chasing comfort leads back to avoidance. Cultivating calm allows growth to continue. Discomfort also carries information. It reveals where your boundaries are weak, where habits need reinforcement, where beliefs need updating. When you listen instead of react, you gain insight. When you escape, you miss it. This does not mean pushing yourself endlessly. It means discerning between harmful stress and constructive discomfort. One depletes you, the other strengthens you. With practice, you learn the difference. The ability to sit with discomfort is a skill, and like any skill, it improves with repetition. Each time you stay present instead of retreating, you build confidence. Not because the discomfort disappears, but because you know you can handle it. Eventually something shifts. Discomfort no longer feels like an obstacle to peace. It becomes part of the process, a companion on the path, not a barrier. And when you reach this point, you realize that calm is not the absence of challenge. It is the ability to remain steady within it. As you learn to remain steady through discomfort, a deeper transformation begins to take shape. It is no longer just about actions or habits. It is about identity, about the kind of person you are becoming through repeated choices. Life does not respond to intentions. It responds to patterns. And patterns are shaped by identity. When you consistently act with awareness, discipline, and calm, you stop seeing those behaviors as things you do. They become expressions of who you are. This shift is subtle but powerful. You no longer force yourself to show up. You show up because it aligns with your sense of self. This is how identity evolves, not through affirmations or declarations, but through evidence. Each time you follow through, you reinforce a new self-image, someone who acts instead of waits, someone who responds instead of reacts. Someone who remains grounded when things are uncertain. As this identity strengthens, life begins to feel different. Not easier, but clearer. Challenges no longer feel personal. Setbacks don't define you. They inform you. You become less emotionally reactive and more intentional in how you move through situations. This is what it means to become the person life responds to. Not because you control everything, but because you control yourself. When your internal state is stable, external chaos has less influence. You stop being pulled in every direction by circumstances. You respond selectively, thoughtfully, calmly. This changes how people interact with you, how opportunities appear, and how problems resolve themselves over time. It's important to understand that this is not about dominance or force. It's about presence. People trust calm. They respect consistency. They respond to clarity. When your actions align with your values, your presence becomes grounded, and grounded presence is powerful. This identity shift also reduces internal conflict. You spend less energy debating what you should do because your actions are aligned with who you are becoming. Decisions feel simpler. Boundaries feel clearer. Energy once spent on overthinking is redirected toward meaningful effort. You also begin to see yourself differently during difficulty. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "How do I respond as the person I am becoming?" That question changes everything. It anchors you in agency and forward movement. Becoming this person is not a destination. It is a process, one that continues to deepen as long as you remain intentional. There will still be moments of doubt, moments of fatigue, but they no longer derail you. They pass. And gradually, without force or urgency, you realize something profound. Life hasn't changed dramatically. You have. And because you have, everything you touch begins to change with you. When you look back at where this journey began, it becomes clear that nothing dramatic was required. No sudden breakthrough, no external rescue, no perfect moment. What changed was quieter, deeper, and far more lasting. You stopped waiting. You stopped hoping that life would shift on its own, and you began shifting yourself, not through force, but through awareness, not through pressure, but through responsibility. And in doing so, you reclaimed something essential, the ability to respond to life with calm intention rather than unconscious habit. This is where integration happens, where everything you've explored begins to settle into something stable. You are no longer chasing change. You are living it. Change is no longer a future goal. It is a present way of being. Integration does not mean perfection. It means acceptance without resignation. You accept where you are without allowing it to define where you are going. You understand that growth is not linear, and that moments of difficulty are not signs of regression. They are part of the rhythm of becoming. Calm, at this stage, is no longer something you seek. It is something you practice. A steady return to awareness when emotions rise. A deliberate pause before reaction. A reminder that you don't need to control everything to remain grounded. This is the quiet strength of self-mastery. Not loud, not urgent, not fragile. It does not depend on motivation or ideal conditions. It rests on clarity, discipline, and self-trust built over time. You now understand the central truth not as an idea, but as lived experience. Nothing changes until you do. And when you do change, internally, deliberately, consistently, life begins to respond differently, not instantly, not magically, but reliably. You stop feeling like you are being pushed through time. You feel like you are moving with it. Each day becomes an opportunity to reinforce alignment rather than escape discomfort. Each choice becomes a chance to strengthen the person you are becoming. There will still be uncertainty, still challenges, still moments when old habits try to return, but they no longer define you. They are signals, reminders, invitations to return to what you already know. And what you know now is this: you are not powerless. You are not waiting. You are not trapped. You are capable of change because you are capable of choice. Let this understanding settle. Let it become part of how you move, decide, and respond. There is no rush, no finish line to cross, only a steady, intentional path forward. Nothing changes until you do, and now you are already in motion.